This is Eagle News Canada. I'm Archie Rose Natividad Yi, coming to you from Vancouver in the province of British Columbia, Canada, bringing you news and commentary from across the country. Here are some of the stories we'll cover today. Ontario implements province-wide emergency break. Long-term care home nurses suffer post-traumatic stress. Agreement to connect nearly 150,000 Quebecers to high-speed internet. Montrealers call for action against domestic abuse in memory of Rebecca Love Harry and 6 others. Hawaii Congressman updates on the Filipino War Veterans Parole Program. And deepest wreck dive reaches U.S. World War II ship off Philippines. Now to the stories. Ontario implements a province-wide emergency break due to increasing COVID-19 cases in the province. Eagle News correspondent Ashley Sakmar reports.
On Thursday, Ontario Premier Doug Ford announced a province-wide emergency break shutdown amidst a third wave of the pandemic. When asked about what makes the shutdown different from Ontario's previous lockdowns, this is what the Premier had to say.
We see it spreading at a rapid pace, so it's a complete shutdown of the entire province. We also see, the people gathering in large groups that were totally discouraging. We saw what happened in the last holiday season. It took off, so we're discouraging that. Outdoor dining, I can tell you, it kills me to cut off the outdoor dining. It does. I'm getting calls, my phone's blowing up, and my heart breaks for these people.
The Ford government received plenty of criticism following the recent announcement. Andrea Horwath, Ontario NDP leader, tweeted, "While experts warned him of explosive growth of more infectious and more deadly variants, he cancelled public health protections. The public health measures fall short of what many experts are calling for. No small business financial support, no paid sick days, no comprehensive workplace testing, no class sizes cap, no plan to get essential workers vaccinated, no paid time off to get the shot. This approach failed before, and I'm fearful it will fail again." Other criticisms were directed towards a statement the Premier made on March 29th when speaking about young Ontarians. Take a look.
The message is, number one, 50% of the cases are with younger people now. And I got a message to the young folks, guys, this party's not over. You know what I mean? You just got to make sure you follow the protocols, follow the guidelines, because what happens, you bring it home to one of your loved ones, your parents, your grandparents. It's unacceptable. When we're seeing 50% of the cases from young people, and by the way, the young people, when they get in ICU, they stay there a lot longer, so they're taking up more capacity. So I just can't stress it enough. You go down the street, and especially in Toronto, you just can't. Guys, we got to watch it. This is serious.
Many were outraged by the Premier's comment, citing that a large number of Ontario's youth are those working low-income essential retail trade and food service jobs at the front lines of the pandemic. In a study done by Statistics Canada in 2018, youth minimum wage workers account for 52.3% of all minimum wage workers. Over the last 20 years, the prevalence of employees earning minimum wage remained higher among youth workers. In 2018, 32.7% of all minimum wage workers were employed in retail trade, while 26% worked in accommodation and food services. The City of Toronto has recently published data that shows vaccination rates by age groups within the city. Those with the lowest vaccination numbers are from 16 to 19 years of age, and the second lowest from ages 20 to 24. Currently in Ontario's phase 1 of the vaccine rollout, Youths in the aforementioned age groups, even those working in essential services, aside from healthcare workers, are not being considered high risk and are therefore ineligible for vaccination. Stephen Del Duca, leader of the Ontario Liberal Party, tweeted, "Essential workers in grocery stores and childcare facilities continue to have the most in-person interactions at work, and they should be vaccinated, both for their own safety and for the safety of those they interact with on the job. Next, we need paid sick leave now. It is simply appalling that Doug Ford has continued to deny Ontario workers the ability to isolate when they're sick or awaiting test results." In Toronto, Ashley Sackmar, Eagle News, we live in interesting times.
Majority of nurses who worked in long-term care homes during early days of the pandemic say they suffer from post-traumatic stress syndrome. Eagle News correspondent Thomas I. Likeness reports.
According to a survey by the Ontario Nurses Association, the pandemic has taken a toll on the emotional and psychological health of nurses in long-term care homes. The association says more than half of those who worked in a home with an outbreak reported symptoms of post-traumatic stress syndrome. The percentage increases to nearly 61% in homes with a large outbreak. The association surveyed about 3,300 of its members employed in nursing homes about what it was like to work during the first 6 months of the pandemic. Horrible living conditions for residents, staff shortages, and a lack of personal protective equipment were the major problems cited by the nurses. According to the survey, nearly 1/4 of the nurses in nonprofit homes and 42% in for-profit homes reported they had to wear the same mask with both healthy and sick residents. It also noted a majority of the respondents indicated managers told them things like the supply of PPE was an issue, that it was a cost issue, that their use of PPE was wasteful, and using PPE would scare residents and or family members. More than a third of those asked said measures to protect staff were non-existent, inadequate, or brought in too late. Others said, in some cases, management ignored government directives. On the issue of finances, 1 out of 5 nurses say they lost income or hours as a result of quarantine and isolation. The report goes on to note that poor conditions have led to a number of nurses changing the way they view their profession and long-term care. The association says this finding is troubling, and it could affect the future of long-term care if we continue to lose nurses through disillusionment and burnout. In Edmonton, Canada, Thomas I. Likeness, Eagle News. We live in interesting times.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced an equal investment from the Government of Canada and Quebec to connect nearly 150,000 homes to high-speed internet. Eagle News correspondent Andre Lechois has the details.
The Government of Canada, the Government of Quebec, and Internet services providers Videotron, Cogeco, Bell, Xplornet, Surgitel, and TELUS are partnering to launch the extensive Canada-Quebec operation to high speed to connect nearly 150,000 homes to high-speed internet by September 2022. This operation is made possible by an equal investment totaling $826 million from the Government of Canada and the Government of Quebec. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and Premier François Legault were joined today by the Minister of Innovation, Science and Industry, François-Philippe Champagne, and the Parliamentary Assistant to the Premier of Quebec, as well as high-speed internet, Gilles Bélanger, to make this announcement in the context of the global COVID-19 pandemic.
An internet connection isn't a luxury, it's a necessity. That's why last November, we announced a $1.75 billion investment for the Universal Broadband Fund. We're also investing $600 million for satellite capacity to connect even the most remote communities. With programs like these, we'll connect 98% of all Canadians to high-speed internet by 2026 and all Canadians before 2030. That means more small businesses that can reach customers online, more young people who can get schoolwork done from home, and more grandparents who can FaceTime their grandkids. We're not stopping until we've closed this digital gap. All Canadians, including and especially in rural, remote and northern communities, will have the internet they need to succeed.
The COVID-19 crisis has shown important it is to have access to digital broadband services. By investing this project throughout the Connect to Innovate program and the Universal Broadband Fund, we can help bridge the digital divide and stimulate the economic growth and create jobs. The Honorable François-Philippe Champagne, Federal Minister of Innovation, Science and Industry, announced that with today's announcement, Quebec has truly become the first in Canada when it comes to connecting its population to high-speed internet. To date, the Quebec government alone has invested more than $1 billion to accelerate high-speed internet access to all Quebecers by fall 2022. Reporting from Ottawa, Canada, this is André Lajoie. We live in interesting times.
Joining us is Eagle News correspondent Marjorie Quintos to talk about the march held in Montreal in memory of a domestic violence victim. Hello, Marjorie.
Hello, Archie. So yesterday, Saturday afternoon, hundreds of people held a vigil in downtown Montreal in honor of Rebecca Harry. She's a 29-year-old woman who died after being assaulted by her boyfriend last week. According to police, Harry was rushed to the hospital on March 20 and died 3 days later. Her boyfriend, 32-year-old Brandon McIntyre, has been charged with second-degree murder and is scheduled to appear on court on April 21. Harry was survived by a 9-year-old son and a big family. So Geneviève Guilbeault, Minister of Public Security, in a statement at the National Assembly, stated that, we cannot accept this situation. So, in Montreal, this is Marjorie Quintos, Eagle News. We live in interesting times.
Thank you for that, Marjorie. We see from our observations, there seems to be a lot of people who have gathered in that rally. Isn't there a protocol to prevent people from gathering?
Actually, Archie, demonstrations are permitted in Quebec, but wearing masks or face covers is always mandatory. For personal reasons, though, I try to keep my distance from people, and I only stay for a few minutes. It was respectful.
That's good to hear. Well, there have been several demonstrations happening in Montreal recently. And in fact, many people have been arrested. Now, can you describe the atmosphere of this rally?
You know what? This was a peaceful one. And the vigil ended around 7 p.m. So everyone respected the curfew, which is now adjusted to 9:30, by the way. There were police officers within the perimeter, but so far I didn't hear any screaming or yelling. There were some people who were singing solemnly and in harmony. So overall, it was a peaceful one, although it caused some traffic, which is now uncommon downtown.
Now, domestic violence is a crime, and we have a strong police force. Now, why do you think it still happens? And, with 7 deaths, that's quite a lot. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I'm lucky that I don't have anyone that I know of that had been a victim of domestic violence. But from my observation, domestic violence is not just a problem by police enforcing all these government action plans. Actually, we have a government action plan, which is a 70-pager, and it's still valid until 2023. Personally, I think it's because the victims, oftentimes, it's difficult for them to report the abuse that they're suffering or have suffered within the confines of their own home. So it's challenging for people to call the police. It's embarrassing to tell their friends about what's happening, and all the more they're scared to tell their families that they're being abused, especially for women, right? But domestic violence actually, it happens to even to men, even to children, of course. It's just, I believe that for me personally, when we talk about being confined at home with all these lockdowns, especially it was like from 8 p.m. we're supposed to be at home already. It's difficult to find escape, right? So I think that's just my observation.
Well, thank you for that. It is definitely a very challenging time. We know over there in Montreal, there still continues to be some restrictions. You mentioned that there was a change in curfew. I think it has now been extended from what formerly was 8 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. for everybody to be home. Can you tell us if that actually has made any difference, if that has improved any mental health for many of the Montrealers there? Can you tell us a little bit about how that change has impacted the residents?
Well, first, when daylight saving time was adjusted, right? Like we can enjoy a bit more of the sun, and of course, like beating the rush hour from 5 to 7. It's something that, like, there are many people that live across the sides of the city or the island, and if you beat the traffic, you're lucky. But if you have to beat the traffic at the same time, if you have to run some errands or buy something on the way, that was challenging. So the curfew being adjusted to 9:30, it makes some difference. Because after all, like we always have to want to be at home during dinner time, right? But 9:30 sounds okay for me. It's bedtime for most of the kids anyway. So
wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us on the show today.
Thank you.
Now there's more news to come. You're watching Eagle News Canada. Welcome back. You're watching Eagle News Canada. I'm Archie Rose Natividad from Vancouver, British Columbia. Since the early 2000s, a congressman from Hawaii has made it a top priority to help aging Filipino war veterans in the U.S. reunite with their loved ones in the Philippines. Eagle News correspondent Alfred Asenas from the EBC Hawaii Pacific Bureau has this exclusive interview.
Congressman Ed Case explains why he has taken great interest in helping families in the Philippines to be reunited with their war veteran loved ones already in their twilight years.
One issue that rose to the top pretty fast for me in that representation was that with our Filipino World War II veterans who had fought, of course, incredibly bravely during World War II, had come to this country in part as a recognition for their services, them and their spouses, and then family members could not join them because of this long wait. And the fact of the matter was the veterans were getting elderly. They needed care. They should be with their families. They needed the care of their families, and yet their families could not reunify with them. And so it was in that period in my own service that I introduced the original bill, which was to allow for expedited immigration consideration for the families, the close families, primarily adult children of Filipino World War II veterans. And I didn't succeed in passing that actual bill during that service, but of course later on, that was achieved through the parole process, which is a special proceeding available to the administration to essentially fast track the immigration situation in humanitarian areas. So in other words, one could gain humanitarian parole for a family member in emergency situations to care for their family member in the United States without having to wait all of those years on a temporary basis. So it wasn't a permanent solution, but it was a solution that was available then.
The Hawaii congressman also described the challenges he faced in keeping the program alive and available, especially during the Trump administration.
The Trump administration decided to terminate the parole program. This was about 2 years ago, and I felt that was dead wrong. So bringing you up to date, they proceeded with it anyway, but they did not fully implement the revocation of the parole program. And neither to this date has it been revoked. So it remains in place. Folks that are here under parole to take care of their elderly family members can stay here. But when the Biden administration came into office, we urged President Biden's new administration to reverse the prior decision to revoke the parole program. And we're awaiting their decision. And thus far, the federal government has not moved forward with that revocation. So, we hope that what that means is they're reconsidering it. Now, one thing I should note is that President Biden has proposed his U.S. Citizenship Act, which is a bill to reform our immigration system. And the bill that both Senator Giron and I have introduced into the last Congress is part of a massive measure that's before Congress today. So we've made headway in terms of educating folks on what this is all about.
Although Mr. Case did not specify the costs that applicants might incur, he did assure that the federal government will do everything possible to assist veterans and their families to be reunited no matter the cost.
Well, the cost of administering the parole program are not, I don't think, significant costs. They're more administrative. They're the cost of processing an application for parole. And it's been relatively limited in terms of the number of applications for use of this program. I think that, there aren't that many World War II veterans left. And I think the parole program, since it started, has had only about 600 applications, of which 300 plus have been accepted. And so that's not a big cost.
Reporting from Honolulu, Hawaii, I'm Alfred Asenas, Eagle News. We live in interesting times.
A U.S. Navy destroyer sunk during World War II and lying nearly 6,500 meters below sea level off the Philippines has been reached in the world's deepest shipwreck dive, an American exploration team said. A crewed submersible filmed, photographed, and surveyed the wreckage of the USS Johnston off Samar Island during 2 8-hour dives completed late last month. Texas-based undersea technology company Caladan Oceanic said. The 115-meter-long ship was sunk on October 25, 1944, during the Battle of Leyte Gulf as U.S. forces fought to liberate the Philippines, then a U.S. colony from Japanese occupation. Its location in the Philippine Sea was discovered in 2019 by another expedition group, but most of the wreckage was beyond the reach of their remotely operated vehicle. Only 141 of the ship's 327 crew survived, according to U.S. Navy records. The Caladan Oceanic-backed expedition found the bow, bridge, and midsection intact, with the hull number 557 still visible. 2 full 5-inch gun turrets, twin torpedo racks, and multiple gun mounts remain in place, it said. Team navigator and historian Park Stevenson said the wreck bore the damage inflicted during the intense surface battle 76 years ago. It took fire from the largest warship ever constructed, the Imperial Japanese Navy battleship Yamato, and ferociously fought back, said Stevenson. Well, that's our program for today. Join us again next week as we bring stories that matter to you. Visit our websites at eaglenews.net and eaglenewslive.com. And also follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and on YouTube. Thank you for watching. I am Archie Rose Natividad Yi. We live in interesting times.